We are now at the semi-halfway point in this saga. In the previous part, I discussed how Jimmie Johnson's championship winning seasons went from 2006 to 2010. After the 2010 season, many fans during the off-season had thought he could seal the deal again, following the 2011 season. I won't say no more until I go more and more in depth about his 2011 season. So, without further ado, let's begin. The year won't get off to a good start, unfortunately, considering a wreck in the Daytona 500 put the 48 team in the danger zone already. At least he would settle inside the top 5 and top 10 in some races in the beginning of the year, those including Phoenix and Bristol with a third. He came close to winning in Fontana, but Kevin Harvick, who was closing in fast, is nicknamed the Closer for a reason.
Kyle Busch is 5 car lengths back. Here comes Harvick.
He's got him. Got loose. He's got him. That little push getting into 3. That little bump.
Harvick, Johnson switches lanes. Johnson can't get there. Harvick wins it.
Texas and Richmond, he would score an 8th place finish. But coming to the conclusion of the Talladega race, Johnson would time his winning move at the right place at the right time.
Watch out, down low.
Way down comes Johnson. He's got room. They're 3 wide. 3 by 3 to the line. Maybe Jimmie Johnson.
In one of the most closest finishes in NASCAR history, he edges out Clint Bowyer by 2 1/1000ths of a second. He would score his first pole award in the year at the Monster Mile of none other than Dover International Speedway. Having another strong run at the track facility, leading the most laps of 207, the 48 team would score a 9th place result at the day's end. However, the speedy drive and momentum did not carry over into the World 600. A blown engine put the 48 team behind the wall in the race yet again. This would result in a 28th place. During the summer season, it was up and down. In other words, there were times where Johnson finished inside the top 10 or top 5, and there were also times he had mediocre runs. One of the races he came close to winning was the inaugural Kentucky Cup race. He would settle in the 3rd position, finishing behind drivers David Rudman, believe it or not, and race winner Kyle Busch. Despite a 19th place at Indianapolis, Johnson would finish in 5th at New Hampshire, 4th at Pocono, 10th at Watkins Glen, 2nd place to Kyle Busch in Michigan, 4th in Bristol, and another 2nd place to Jeff Gordon at Atlanta in one of the most craziest battles for the race win. At Richmond, it seemed like Johnson was in contention to cap off another top 10 or top 5 showing to conclude the regular season. However, it wasn't easy. Following another run-in with Kurt Busch at Pocono weeks before, the two rivals would go at it again under the lights at Richmond Raceway. Twice.
Johnson in trouble. Montoya also goes around. Caution number 10.
Tomorrow you can start to roll. You can. Clear. Again, fellas.
He locked up the brakes. Yeah, his car was loose getting down in there. He tried to drive it in and just locked up the front tires. That just slid up into the 48. Saw Montoya there in the aftermath. Looks like Kurt just charged the corner a little bit too hard. Locked the front wheels up. Dropped the front end straight up into Jimmie. Right along with Kurt Busch down here in turn 1. that hard. You lock them up, the car just goes straight. Wow. He found ways to get to it. He had to work hard to get there.
Took some talent.
He's a 5-time champ.
Oh, this will be an interesting picture.
All clear.
Not quite. The throttle
Take it.
So, Newton's law, an action and an equal and opposite reaction. There it is. If I have my high school science right. Moving the 48 out of the way here.
Kurt Busch would go on to finish 5th, while Jimmie Johnson finished 31st. Throughout most of the chase, there were times where Jimmie Johnson was consistent, but for the most part, not consistent. The stats in the final 10 races of the season look like this: 10th in Chicagoland, 18th at Loughton, 2nd at Dover after having a shot to win for the second time in the 2011 season, leading 157 laps, finishing 2nd to none other than his nemesis, Kurt Busch. 1 week later, he was able to cap off win number 2 in the year at the Kansas Speedway, after dominating most of the day, leading 197 laps out front, having to hold off and pull away from Casey Kane and Brad Keselowski in doing so. A week after that came Charlotte Motor Speedway. This would be the night Johnson would want to forget for a long time.
They're still side by side there, Alan. Let's send it back to you, but don't forget about Ambrose. He finished 6th here in the spring.
And having a top five. Right, hang on there. Jimmie Johnson. Sideways. Is he going to be able to save it? Hard hit.
Holy smokes. Thank goodness for the safer barriers and all of the improved safety equipment inside the cars, because that was one hell of a scary wreck. One of the hardest hits, if not the hardest hit, Johnson had ever experienced in his Cup Series career. End results being 34th. Yeah, Charlotte in 2011 wasn't that all kind to Johnson at all. Yikey. Anyway, the rest of the results are this: 26th at Talladega, 2nd to Tony Stewart in Martinsville, 14th in both Texas and Phoenix, and an abysmal and mediocre run in Homestead, resulting in 32nd place. All in all, 2011 was a good year for Jimmie and his crew. Not that it wasn't, but it could have been better. At least that's what the Johnson fans are thinking. I bet they're thinking that now as they are watching this video. But it is what it is. Jimmie Johnson's stats from the 2011 Sprint Cup season are this: 2 wins, 14 top 5s, 21 top 10s, 1 pole, 2 DNFs, led 1,115 laps out front, and had an average finish of 11.9, including a 6th place ranking result in the final standings. Onwards to 2012. New paint job, new changes. Unfortunately, it would get them nowhere when Daytona Speed Weeks rolled around. Following a crash in the Budweiser shootout, as well as wrecking out of the Daytona 500 on just the 2nd lap.
Already. The wall. Slams to the outside. It's 5-time champion Jimmie Johnson. He collects Danica Patrick and the 34 of David Reagan.
Not even a minute after the drop of the green flag, and they're already wrecking. Because of Johnson being one of those drivers involved, end results for him are a 42nd, his worst Daytona 500 in history. The next 4 races had Johnson back to his consistent talent. 4th in Phoenix, 2nd to Tony Stewart, who is the defending winner and 3-time champion at this point, in Las Vegas. 9th at Bristol, and a top 10 in California. At Martinsville, Johnson had one of the fastest cars, leading for 111 laps. But then, on the first attempt of overtime, this happened.
Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson at the front. Clint Boyer and Brad Keselowski trying to steal one here. Green flag.
Look at Ryan Newman. He gave Boyer a shot getting down there. Here goes Newman. Newman's going to take the lead.
Chad Knaus, Johnson, and the rest of the 48 crew members, and of course the fan base, left the short track facility pissed as all hell. End result of this race was a 12th. At least they would rally back at Texas, leading the most laps of 156, but in the end, Greg Biffle was able to outlast Johnson for the win, which would give the 48 team a runner-up result. Kansas, they would place 3rd. Richmond, they would place in 6th. At Talladega, engine issues put the 48 team sidelined, which resulted in an abysmal 35th place. Coming into Darlington for the Southern 500, Jimmie Johnson was back to his winning ways.
Jimmie Johnson sails off into turn 3. Hamlin is going to have to deal with Stewart for second. Hendrick Motorsports 200 Sprint Cup victory belongs to Jimmie Johnson in the Southern 500.
There you go, Mr. Rick. Got you one.
After leading most of the night for 134 laps, he would cruise to victory lane at the egg-shaped racetrack for the 3rd time in his career, and win for the first time in the 2012 season. The winning momentum carried over into the All-Star Challenge.
Jimmie Johnson and the Lowe Chevrolet are going to victory lane and $1 million.
The money he won for 90 laps, he made $11,348 a lap tonight. Not a bad payday.
And I'd be real careful with that thing right here, right now. I don't want to damage it. Like Carl did last year. We don't want to slide her up in the wall.
I don't think he's worried about saving that engine.
If he scoots that nose up against that wall, Chad Knaus will be upside his head.
Now that should have won the burnout contest right there. Doing a burnout right up to the starter stand, grabbing the flag and driving away with the wheels still spinning.
A little $1 billion move, boys.
When the World 600 rolled around, it was an okay race for Johnson with an 11th place effort, but hey, at least he didn't have engine issues or crashed out this time, so that's a positive. But anyway, moving on, Jimmie Johnson would once again win in Dover Downs. And what a popular win it was, for those that are fans of the Madagascar franchise.
Winner at Darlington, 8th on the all-time win list, 7th Dover win, tying Richard Petty and Bobby Allison for the most here. Jimmie Johnson wins the FedEx 400, benefiting Autism Speaks, his 57th career win.
Wonderful, wonderful job, everybody. Jimmie, you whipped them today, man. Maximum points today, man. That was fantastic.
This Dover clown is quite a sight, isn't it? Anyway, the results after the Dover race look like this. 4th in Pocono, 5th at both Michigan and Sonoma, along with a 6th in Kentucky. The Firecracker 400 at Daytona didn't go the way the 48 team had hoped.
Oh, we got trouble, Larry. Coming to the tri-oval. A number of cars involved. Still spinning. Jimmie Johnson, Jeff Gordon on the grass, Regan Smith, Michael Waltrip back up through the groove, and there's Bill Elliott as well.
The next race at New Hampshire, Johnson qualified 7th, finished 7th. In the Brickyard 400, he led 99 laps out front, which was the most out of anyone in the field that day. Considering Johnson had the faster car in the end, he was able to capitalize, winning at the Brickyard for the 4th time in his career.
His hero Rick Mears won the Indianapolis 500 4 times. They've got something to talk about. As Johnson clears the final corner and the checkered flag is in the air. A 4th win in the Brickyard 400 to Jimmie Johnson.
Pocono, he would lead for 44 laps, finishing 14th. Watkins Glen, he would qualify in 3rd, finish in 3rd. The Michigan slump struck again, following a 27th place showing after suffering an engine failure. Then in Bristol, he would lead for 52 laps, finishing runner-up to Denny Hamlin. With 56 laps to go at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the 48 team would once again find the wall, which would result in a 34th place. Then at Richmond, he would finish in 13th. We now cut to the chase for the Sprint Cup of 2012. And what a hell of a start it was for Johnson. Led the most laps in Chicagoland, only to finish second to Brad Keselowski when the checkered flag flew in that race. Then in New Hampshire, once again, a 2nd place showing. This time, he would finish behind Denny Hamlin. In Dover Downs, he would lead for 43 laps out front. In the end, he would score a 4th place finish. At the Talladega race, he was one of the many drivers, almost everybody in the remaining field, involved in one of the biggest and scariest wrecks in NASCAR history.
2 bottom, 1 top. Still there. Still like that. 2 bottom, 1 top. We're in it, fellas. Stay on the gas if you can. Do what you can, man.
The rest of the results look like this. Charlotte, 3rd. Kansas, 9th. Back-to-back victories in Martinsville and Texas. After starting on pole and leading the most laps out front in both of those races that he won. Then in Phoenix, a mediocre run plus a bad day equals a 32nd place result. Heading into Homestead, Jimmie Johnson was 20 points behind Brad Keselowski. A dominating performance from the 48 team could mean a big difference between winning the title or a podium finish in the final standings. In the season finale, Johnson would lead for 25 laps, but coming towards the closing stages, the 6th championship vanished, following rear gear issues. Due to this, the 48 team left Homestead, Miami with an abysmal 36th place in the race. Johnson would rank 3rd in the championship standings by 40 points, losing the title to Penske Racing's Brad Keselowski. Jimmie Johnson's stats from the 2012 season are this: 5 wins, 18 top 5s, 24 top 10s, 4 poles, 6 DNFs, led 1,744 laps out front, and had an average finish of 11.2. So now we hit the year 2013, which is the year NASCAR goes next gen with a new Generation 6 car body design. Johnson would use this new car as an advantage point in the Daytona 500 event. On this particular day, he had one of the fastest cars leading for only 17 laps. But in the end, he would go on to win the Great American Race for the second time, ending the slump.
For the second time, the Daytona 500 goes to Jimmie Johnson, five-time champion from Oklahoma, California, and his Rick Hendricks Chevrolet.
He can thank Dale Jr. for that. Second year, Dale Jr. has come out late the previous Sunday.
Nearly had it in the bag in Phoenix, but couldn't keep up with Carl Edwards coming to the checkers. In Las Vegas, he led for 66 laps, only to place in 6th at the day's end. Johnson's second win of the year would come at the paperclip of Martinsville Speedway. He qualified on pole and led the most laps of 346. Despite a 12th in Richmond, a streak of consistent finishes would take place at tracks such as Texas with a 6th, Kansas with a 3rd, Talladega with a 5th, a 4th place showing in the Southern 500 at Darlington, as well as a bonus win in the All-Star Challenge.
Five-time is four-time in All-Star wins. Jimmie Johnson wins the Sprint All-Star and $1 million back-to-back.
The World 600, though, would be the complete opposite. The 48 team would qualify 12th, but would finish in 22nd when the checkered flag flew. At Dover, Johnson looked to be in contention for another win at the Monster Mile, but he had to beat Juan Pablo Montoya in order to do so. Well, that was out of the equation, following a restart violation from jumping the start. Due to this, he was penalized, and instead of finishing inside the top 5, or maybe won the race, maybe winning the race, Johnson settled for 17th. Another win taken away after leading the second most laps of 143. At Pocono, the 48 team rallied back to winning ways. Consistency was key at the beginning of the summer season. The results looked like this: Sears Point in Kentucky, 9th, 6th in Loudoun, a runner-up finish to Ryan Newman at Indy, and of course, there was the sweep at Daytona with the win in the Coke 0400.
Through turns 3 and 4 for the final time. Off the corner, here comes Jimmie Johnson. He's dominated the race. Now he can see the finish line. That's Busch in the outside lane. Not making a move. Trouble behind her. Danica and others. Jimmie Johnson gets the win at Daytona.
After an 8th place showing at Watkins Glen, inconsistency would soon follow once more. With results of 40th at Michigan, 36th at Bristol, 28th in Atlanta, and another 40th place in Richmond. Heading into the playoffs, Johnson was still the #1 seed to win the title, let alone become his competitive self in the final 10 races to cap off a 6th championship. And it showed. Chicagoland, 5th. New Hampshire, 4th. A dominating day in Dover, leading the most laps, securing win number 8 at the 1-mile track. Kansas, 6th. Charlotte, 4th. Talladega, 13th. But the fans and of course the 48 team were not concerned about that, because the numbers kept coming and coming. Martinsville, 5th. Texas led the most laps and scored win number 6 in the year. Phoenix and Homestead, he would settle for 3rd and 9th. In the end, Jimmie Johnson was able to beat Matt Kenseth by 19 points in the final standings. With that being said, Jimmie Johnson was crowned as the 2013 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion. This would be his 6th title after winning the last one in 2010. And yes, another dominating year in front of your face. Anyway, Jimmie Johnson's stats from the 2013 season are this: 6 wins, 16 top 5s, 24 top 10s, 3 poles, led 1,985 laps out front, and had an average finish of 10.7. Heading into 2014, everyone had the same thing in mind: Johnson winning the Cup for the 7th time. The question was he able to get the job done? Can he get the job done? Well, all I can say is, stick around for the next part, which will contain seasons 2014, 2015, and 2016. So that wraps up today's video presentation. I thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying the saga, and until next time, peace out and have a good one.